No DQ Galaxy, we are live with a recap of AEW Collision for Saturday, October 28th, 2023. Shout out to everybody watching live and shout out to people watching on demand as well. I appreciate your viewership and support. Let's get right into this recap. The main event for this show, AEW World Championship, MJF defending against Kenny Omega. Just days before MJF was set to surpass Omega as the longest reigning AEW World Champion. Did MJF come out of this show with the championship? We'll get to that shortly. Now, I have noticed the last few weeks, no more opening match promos, Saturday night's main event style. Those are gone, and that's a shame. I like those promos with the wrestlers hyping up their matches for the show. We just went straight to the Collision intro with Elton John, and then we had our first match of the evening, the number one contender for the AEW World title. He's got the match at Full Gear. Jay White versus AR Fox. Now, it's one of those matches where you know damn well Jay White is not losing. He's the number one contender. AR Fox, of course, does his flashy offense. He hit his shooting star press off the apron. Jay White did get the heat for a while. Bullet Club Gold was out there gloating, and AR Fox ended up coming over the top with a dive onto Bullet Club Gold. And he also hit a dive on White. He got White back in the ring. He came off the top with a swanton. But White kicked out, of course. Fox kept the momentum going, but then White was able to avoid the 450, and then White picked up the victory with the Blade Runner. Match was fine, but very predictable. You know, Jay White isn't losing to AR Fox. And then after the match was over, MJF showed up and tried to reclaim his championship, but was unsuccessful. He could not get that title back. He's going to have to do that 8-man tag team match if he actually wants the title back. We had the Acclaimed backstage cutting a promo. They're hyping up 69 days as the Trios champions. There you go, 69 days. And as it turns out, Max Caster was catfished by a fake MJF account, and he was doing the dunce standing in the corner in shame because of what he had done. We had a tag team match. We had the Boys, which is Dalton Castle's lackeys, versus the Ass Boys, the Guns. Basically a squash match here. Guns picked up the victory relatively easily with the 310 to Yuma. Not much to say about it. Squash match. There was a video package for the main event, MJF versus Kenny Omega, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. Ryan Nemeth, the brother of Dolph Ziggler, was interviewed backstage. He was at CJ Perry's locker room, but when the door opened, it was Miro, and Miro beat the hell out of Ryan Nemeth. I wonder if this is setting up an eventual Miro versus Nick Nemeth, formerly Dolph Ziggler, in AEW. I guess time will tell on that. We had an interesting women's match on this show for the AEW women's title. We had Hikaru Shida defending against Abadon, who is basically a zombie. That's her gimmick. She won a match on Rampage to earn this title opportunity. Shida was wearing a dress, and I had no idea why, but apparently it's some character that she was cosplaying as for Halloween. This was basically AEW's version of a trick or street fight that WWE does. And I wasn't even sure that it was no DQ. Like, I saw the props and I was like, okay, why are the props there? And then they started using them, and I was like, oh, it's a no DQ match. But I did not know this going in, that they were going to have a match where they could use the weapons and everything. So it was very much your trick or street fight type of match here. And it was a little awkward at times, in my opinion. Yeah, Matthew, I have no idea who those characters are. So there you go. Shows you what I know about pop culture. You had Abadon going under the ring, and Shida was all confused. And then Abadon tried to pull her under the ring. And then Abadon came out from the other side and attacked Shida. Shida was kind of stupid here. Like, she's under the ring, and you're just looking around like, which way did she go? Which way did she go? And she got beat up. So, yeah, it was kind of goofy. And then Shida started to build up some momentum, and she grabbed a broomstick and jumped off the top with the broomstick, but Abadon just moved out of the way, and Shida just jumped off and landed on the mat. Like, I'm not sure what she was trying to do here. Was she trying to actually fly? Like, I don't know, but it was a silly spot, in my opinion. And then Abadon pulled out some candy, which people thought it was going to be thumbtacks, and they booed that when it turned out to be candy. This was very WWE like. They used the Legos instead of thumbtacks. So they had candy here, and they're doing moves with the candy. Abadon gave Shida a blockbuster on the candy. If anything, the candy might cushion the blow, right? Because it's so soft. Then Shida hit Abadon with a kendo stick, hit her with a knee strike. Abadon kicked out, and then Shida took a pumpkin. This was like something that we'd see with Terry Funk back in the day. Shida put the pumpkin over Abadon's head and delivered another kick and got the victory here. It was entertaining, but yeah, it was a little awkward at times, I must say. Shida is still your champion. Again, no surprise. Third match in a row where it's very clear who's winning the match. We had Tony Storm showing up, by the way, so they're continuing to tease that, which I presume that's going to be the Full Gear Championship match. We had Samoa Joe versus Rhett Titus, who apparently was a former ROH TV champion. I've never seen the guy wrestle before. And it was a glorified squash match. This guy Titus did get in a little bit of offense, but Samoa Joe was clearly winning this one. Fourth match in a row where who's winning. And Joe picked up the win with the Uranagi, followed by the Coquina clutch submission. Joe builds up momentum. They're setting him up for another potential match with MJF. Then we had footage of a QT Marshall interview. I guess it was from Rampage, and apparently he has a AAA title. Like, I don't pay attention to this stuff, but he's got a AAA title. He's back in AEW. I didn't even know he was gone, and he's planning on defending the title, as if we need more titles now to be defended in AEW. We already have like 6 or 7 AEW titles, 6 or 7 ROH titles, New Japan titles, AAA titles. It's a little over the top here. Come on. We had footage of Bryan Danielson, who was injured at the end of Dynamite, and Claudio cut a promo and said that Bryan suffered a broken orbital bone, and he blames it on Okada and Orange Cassidy. He said they're going to pay, and he's coming for Orange Cassidy first. He challenged Orange Cassidy to a match for the international title this coming Wednesday on Dynamite. So there you go. Brian is apparently hurt legitimately. And I think Tony Schiavone said that he's having surgery and will potentially be out of action for the rest of 2023, not coming back until the end of the year. And I mean, the year's almost over. So sounds like he might be out for a month or two, which does suck for him because he's been suffering quite a few injuries during his time in AEW, but that's what happened. That's what happens when you go hard and fast. Injuries are more likely to occur. We had Ricky Starks versus Dax Harwood, and this is yet another match where you know who's winning, because Dax Harwood, when him and Cash Wheeler are teaming up, they usually win. They obviously lost the tag titles, but most of the time they win. When it's a singles match, they almost always lose. So I figured that Ricky Starks was probably picking up the win here. It was a good match, though, and they had some back and forth mat wrestling, and Ricky Starks did his Undertaker rope walk, started to build some momentum, but then after the commercial break, Dax delivered a superplex, and then they traded near falls. Dax hit a brain buster. Starks was able to kick out, and then Dax hit a pile driver, but Big Bill pulled Starks to the outside of the ring to break up the count. And then you had Cash Wheeler there confronting Big Bill. They got back in the ring, but Starks was able to take advantage of what happened, and he picked up the win with a pile driver of his own onto Dax Harwood. So good match. It went about as I expected. And then afterwards, the lights went out. Julia Hart appeared on the stage. And then the lights came back on, and we had the House of Black in the ring. Things were not looking good for FTR. But then we had Roosh and his faction of incredible guys, whatever the name of the group is. They came out there, and they acted like they were going to attack FTR, but instead they helped FTR. So I guess they're faces now, and there was a big brawl, and the good guys cleared the ring. So there you go. Roosh is finally back with his crew, and we'll see where this goes. And Matthew brought up Andrade. Andrade's got his own storyline, like they're teasing that he's going to work with CJ Perry. And he was interviewed, and he said he's a businessman, and he has no comment. He's not going to discuss it any further. We had a backstage segment with Willow Nightingale and Sky Blue. They've been brainwashed or whatever by Julia Hart, and it seems like Willow is back on the right track, but Sky Blue is kind of doing her own thing. They're teasing some dissension with them. And then Claudio came out for a squash match against a guy, I think his name was Hot Sauce. And Claudio just beat the crap out of the guy and applied a little more punishment after the bell rang to send a message. Claudio's pissed, and he's coming for payback. So there you go. I guess he's a heel now because Okada's a babyface and Orange Cassidy is a babyface. Seems like the Combat Club keeps flipping around here. It's hard to keep track of whether they're good guys or bad guys. And then we had the main event of the evening, which was MJF defending his championship against Kenny Omega. Now, up until this point, I thought this was a really lackluster collision, like C-level territory. Main event turned it around for sure. Main event was a strong candidate for TV match of the year and could even be considered a match of the year contender. Excellent main event with these guys. They went almost 30 minutes Now, before the match, Samoa Joe approached MJF and said that they could be friends. All MJF has to do is scream Samoa Joe's name, and Joe will be his friend. So they're continuing to tease something. Now, it was a very lengthy match here. Kenny Omega had some gear that definitely seemed to be inspired by Bret Hart with the pink and black. They had their feeling out process as they do in these long matches, and MJF did the whole sportsmanship thing, went for the handshake, but then gave him the thumb to the eye, and Omega dumped MJF to the outside of the ring, came over the top with a dive, and then threw MJF in the ring, and then to everybody's surprise, MJF came back and did a dive of his own over the top onto Omega, and got a big holy shit chant for that. Then they got back in the ring. Omega took control for a while, but then MJF got his knees up when Omega went for the moonsault. MJF hit the kangaroo kick to a big pop, and then they ended up on the outside of the ring. Kenny Omega set up a table, and they traded near falls in the ring. Both guys were down. There was a comment here from Matthew about Tony Schiavone being awful on the mic. Well, Jim Ross was doing commentary, and at this point, he said that they were competing for the AWA Championship. So, JR, you're about 33 years past when AWA was still a thing. So, there you go. I know it sounds similar to AEW. The match continued, and they ended up on the apron. Omega gave MJF a Snapdragon suplex on the apron, and then power bombed MJF off the apron through the table below, and this led to a quick 90-second commercial break. To AEW's credit, they did very short breaks for this match, so it really was close to uninterrupted. Easy for me to say. After the commercial break, they traded some chops, and then MJF countered the one-winged angel with a poison rana, but then Omega hit his own poison rana. Crowd loved this. They chanted "Fight Forever." And then Omega hit a pile driver. MJF managed to get his foot on the rope, and then we had another commercial break, and then after that, Omega kept the momentum going. He hit the V trigger, and then he hit a second one. He went for the one-winged angel, but then Don Callis showed up. Omega was a little bit distracted, but he kept going. And then Callis actually got on the apron. Referee managed to get Callis out of there, and MJF and Omega traded near falls. MJF hit the heat seeker, but Omega kicked out. Crowd chanted, "This is awesome." MJF then went for the Panama Sunrise, which is Adam Cole's move, but Omega countered it and nearly pinned MJF. I thought this was a great near fall to do the Panama Sunrise and have Omega counter it and nearly win the title. That was well done. And then MJF managed to hit it on his second try. He had another heat seeker and got the 1-2-3 victory. So MJF is still your AEW World Champion. Hell of a match. Definitely carried the show. Absolutely 100%. And they continue to tease that MJF has a lot more challengers coming. Samoa Joe was shown, Wardlow, Powerhouse Hobbs, Bullet Club Gold. They were all watching in the back. And then MJF and Omega had their handshake. They raised each other's hands. And that was the end of this week's Collision. Like, no in-ring promos or anything. It was a very wrestling-heavy show, and the main event was for the world title, so you would expect it to be an all-out back-and-forth encounter, which it was. So like I said, up until the main event, it was like a C show at best. But main event brought it up several notches. So overall, I will go with a B for Collision. And that's thanks to the main event. definitely go out of your way to check out the main event if you missed it. And time will tell if it pays off with the TV viewership. Like attendance wise, it looked okay in the arena. Like it looked like they had about 4,000 people, but not a ton of ticket movement after this match was announced. And we'll see what kind of number they do if they do anything above their average for this. I hope they do. And they got something out of giving away this match for free. I mean, I get it timing wise because MJF was about to break the record. Why not do it? And they had Don Callis out there. I figured we might see a little bit of interference, and they kept it to a minimum. And it was just enough where Omega can say, I might have been able to win the match, but Don Callis was that little factor that cost me. Like they can definitely play that up. Like it was not overdone. It was just him coming out there, and then the referee got rid of him. They kept the match going for a few more minutes. So that was well done. And overall, the match was great. So check that out. And that's all I got for Collision. I don't really feel much excitement for next week's Collision. Like I said, the majority of the show was kind of filler, but you know, if they can put some big matches on there and it doesn't jeopardize their pay-per-view buys, then you might as well do it and try to get people in the habit of watching. Anyways, thank you all again. I appreciate your viewership and support. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up and buy a shirt at nodq.com/merch. We're celebrating 25 years of nodq.com. So that would be a great way to support the site. Pick up a shirt over there, nodq.com/merch. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Have a great Halloween. I will see you guys after Raw for the Raw recap. No DQ review this week. My wedding anniversary is Sunday, so we're taking Sunday off. We'll be back with the review after Crown Jewel, but I will be back after Raw. That's the eve of Halloween. And then with Dynamite, and no SmackDown either because SmackDown was taped. But we do have some stuff coming up, so stay tuned for all that. And I'll see you guys next time. And don't forget, say yeah to nodq.com and pick up a shirt, nodq.com/merch. Take care, everybody.